Hi, friends. My name is Sophia, and this is my brother Ethan. He just got back from school, and now he has to go work at a burger place near our house to wash dishes for 4 hours. Why? Because he owes our parents a ton of money. Of course, it's not easy for a kid to make a lot of money. That's why he's working 7 days a week. But even if he keeps working at this rate until he finishes high school, he still won't be able to pay back everything he owes. Dad says, "Pay off what you can and we'll think about the rest when the time comes." Ethan goes to wash dishes at the burger place every day after school. On the weekends, he does odd jobs around the neighborhood. If it's a nice day, he sets up a lemonade stand outside our house. He says that's what brings in the most money. When the weather isn't so good, he does things like mowing our neighbors' lawns or walking their dogs. My parents run a gift shop together. They are both workaholics. They've been working really hard for years. They leave home at 8 a.m. and don't come back until 9 p.m. That's the reason why all this happened. Recently, this is what we've been doing in the evenings. First, we eat dinner together. Then Ethan goes to his room. He brings all the money he's made that day and gives it to Dad. Dad counts the money and writes down the amount in his notepad. Then he tells Ethan how much he still owes. So, why does Ethan owe so much money to our parents? And why does he work so hard and give them all the money he makes without complaining? Now it's time to tell you about all this. As I said before, my parents work together, and their business is their life. Their customers are usually tourists. They have to keep their gift shop open every single day of the year. So Ethan and I have had to practically raise ourselves. This has its advantages and disadvantages. The best part is we learn to take care of ourselves. On the other hand, we lacked parental discipline. There's no one around asking us, "Why did you do this?" or "Why didn't you do that?" Our parents come home so tired, they don't have the energy to deal with us in the evenings. I always thought this was a blessing. I think it's wonderful to grow up without any pressure from your family. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case for my brother. He took advantage of our parents' absence and spent tons of money on video games. He was doing it for months. That's how we found out that he was really lacking parental discipline. But of course, it was too late. By the time we realized this, Ethan had almost bankrupted the family. After school, both Ethan and I would go to our rooms, and we usually wouldn't come out until after our parents came home from work. I would always do my homework first. Then I'd talk to my friends, watch TV, or spend time on TikTok or YouTube. Whenever I'd go into Ethan's room, he'd always be playing video games. So I knew he was spending most of his time gaming. But I knew that a lot of kids his age were doing the same, so I didn't really worry. But it turned out he was spending a lot of our parents' money on those games. One day, we came back from school as usual. We had a snack in the kitchen and went to our rooms. Half an hour or so had passed. That's when I heard Ethan's door open suddenly and my dad started screaming at him. Dad never comes home in the afternoons. So I panicked and went to see what was happening. Dad was holding a credit card. He waved it at Ethan, screaming, "What could you have bought that maxed out this card? And this is the company card! How did you even get this card's number?" That's how I found out that Ethan spent a ton of money on video games using our parents' credit card. My parents used this card to purchase inventory for the store. Since they make purchases from many different vendors, they didn't notice that Ethan had been using it. When my mom wanted to buy something and discovered that the card had been maxed out, she told my dad. Because the card had a really high credit limit, they never had a problem like this before. When my dad called the bank, they found out about my brother's charges. He naturally was furious and rushed home to confront my brother about it. After that, Ethan probably had the worst night of his life. My dad literally interrogated him. So he had to tell him in detail what he spent all that money on. I don't know anything about video games. I've played Candy Crush a few times when one of my friends was really into it, but that's it. So I didn't understand most of what Ethan said. From what I can remember, he bought an incredibly expensive hat from a game called Roblox, for example. Yes, I said hat, but it wasn't even a real hat. You have your character wear it during the game. I couldn't believe Ethan could be this naive. Dad says it takes 4 days working at the store to make that money. He was so annoyed that he asked my brother, "So how's the hat? Is it nice?" Ethan couldn't even tell Dad was being sarcastic. "Dad, it's really cool. I'm sure you'll like it too," Ethan said while logging into his Roblox account to naively show Dad the hat. After that, Dad told him, "Go and fetch my toolbox from the garage." Ethan still didn't get it, but went and got the toolbox. Dad took out a wrench and smashed my brother's phone into small pieces. The weirdest part was that he did it very calmly and carefully. My brother couldn't believe his eyes. Once he finally understood how angry Dad was, he didn't say a word. Actually, it was a really funny scene, but of course, I couldn't laugh at that point. Apart from the games, Ethan spent a lot of money on YouTubers and some streamers on Twitch. He even became the biggest donor for a girl on Twitch, and she brought him on her live stream to thank him. When things calmed down, I found the video on her channel and watched it. When my brother makes the donation, the girl can't believe her eyes. Then she gets up to dance with joy for minutes on end. It's unbelievable that Ethan wasted our family's money like that. I asked him how he could have done this. He said sadly, "It didn't seem like real money to me. I spent it like it was game money. I regret that even more now that I know how hard it is to actually earn money. But there's nothing I can do about it now." So, how did Ethan get the number of our dad's credit card? Dad asked him since he was curious. Ethan's face turned red. But there was nowhere to run. He looked down and said, "I stole it?" Now it was my dad who turned red from rage. "When did you steal it?" he yelled. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "On your birthday?" he said, his voice trembling. My mom had gotten my dad a massage as a birthday gift. We all went to the spa with him because we were going out to dinner together afterwards. As Dad was getting his massage, we waited in the cafeteria. Ethan sneaked into the dressing room, took the credit card from Dad's wallet, and wrote down the number on a piece of paper. Initially, he just wanted to buy a few things in a game called Fortnite. But when nobody noticed, he kept using the credit card for 2.5 months in many different places, spending money like crazy. The next day, Dad applied for a refund from all the companies Ethan bought things from, but unfortunately, most of them didn't budge. Some of them never even answered his emails. Dad had to ask his lawyer for help, and he had a weird suggestion. He said to Dad, "If you can prove that your credit card was stolen, we can get all the money back in court. But for that to happen, you need to report Ethan. Then he needs to get arrested, of course, so that the crime has been documented. But you don't need to worry. Ethan's young and the judge will let him go with a small fine." Dad told us what the lawyer said over dinner. Ethan was really scared. He begged, "Please don't report me to the police." Dad said, "Why shouldn't I? I think you deserved it." And Ethan started sobbing. Of course, Dad wasn't going to do it, but he scared Ethan once again when he got the chance. That night, Dad said, "So since we can't get our money back, this will be your debt. You are going to pay it off by working." That's how Ethan's work adventure began. My mom's friend got him the job at the burger place. I gave him the idea about jobs in the neighborhood. Ethan knows full well that he's guilty. That's why he accepts whatever we say and works any job with 0 complaints.
Hi, everyone. My name is Oliver. I'm in 10th grade. This is my best friend, Seb. He transferred to our school this year. He's an introvert like me. That's why we hit it off right away. We realized that we had a lot of things in common, and for the first time in my life, I had someone I could call my best friend. Seb says it was the same for him. He never had a close friend like me before. One of the reasons why we hit it off so quickly is that we're both really into horror movies. We were both so happy to find out we had that in common. We would talk about horror movies nonstop. One Sunday, I invited him over for a movie marathon. We were going to watch 3 horror movies back to back. There's a bus stop near our house. Call me when you get on the bus. I'll wait for you at the bus stop, I said to him. But Seb said, don't worry about it. I'll find your place. No matter how much I insisted, he didn't want me to wait for him at the bus stop. I couldn't understand why. I would figure it out later. That day, when Seb came over, we had such a great time. When we were done with the movies, my mom called us to have dinner. Seb loved everything he ate and complimented my mom on each dish. My mom was embarrassed since she wasn't used to receiving so much praise. I thought that Seb was just being overly polite that day. But it turned out there was a heartbreaking reason why he was acting that way, which I would learn about later. As we got closer, Seb started coming to our place more often. Our routine was the same. First, we would watch a movie, then we would eat. We got used to Seb loving everything he was eating and showering my mom with compliments. Around that time, I realized something. Seb never talked about his family. He never invited me to his place either. Normally, of course, he wouldn't have to talk about his family. But now he was my best friend and he came over to our place so often that he was almost like a member of my family. And I didn't know anything about his private life. My dad is a mechanic. Seb and I went to visit his workshop a couple of times. But what did Seb's dad do? I had no idea. One morning, the bus I was taking to school broke down. I decided to walk because I was only 3 stops away. I took a shortcut to get there faster. As I was walking down an alley, I saw a gigantic SUV with tinted windows parked by the road. I'm into cars since my dad is a mechanic. I knew this brand. They made custom-designed luxury SUVs. As I was standing there and staring at the car, the front door opened. A driver wearing a suit and tie stepped out and opened the rear door. Out came Seb, looking like he was still half asleep. Our eyes met. I took one look at the SUV and then at Seb. He was pretty shocked to see me too. You caught me. Let's walk so we're not late. We can talk on the way, he said. I was totally surprised by what Seb was telling me. His father was a famous jewelry designer. They have jewelry stores in many countries. But why was he hiding the fact that his family was rich? I really wanted to know, but I couldn't ask him because he clearly didn't want to talk about it. I just said, that SUV is super cool. If I were you, I'd have the driver drop me off right in front of school. Can someone be ashamed of being rich? That made no sense to me, but Seb seemed to be ashamed. I wish my family were rich too, then I could have anything I wanted. For example, I wouldn't have to use my dad's old phone. I would throw my ancient computer straight into the trash and buy myself a brand new one. The next morning, Seb called me and said, I know I was being weird yesterday. I'm really sorry. I felt embarrassed that I hid this from you. I think now you know why I never invite you over to my house. Since my secret is out now, want to come over and watch movies at my place this weekend? He said. Of course, I said yes. I was very curious about where he lived. On Saturday, Seb's driver came to pick me up. His house was just outside the city. Actually, I should probably say his mansion. It was gigantic. Seb was waiting for me outside. I was so excited to finally get to see the kind of mansion billionaires lived in. When we went inside, I was staring open-mouthed at everything around the house. Everything was exquisite. I felt as if I were in a movie. I couldn't believe someone this rich would be friends with me. Since he lived in such a mansion, our house must have seemed to him like a chicken coop. Seb said, the movie is ready. We can watch it now if you want. I followed him. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the room where we would be watching the movie. It was a proper movie theater. Yes, you heard it right. There was a movie theater with a huge screen in Seb's house. At my place, we watched the movies on my computer screen. I felt ashamed when I thought about it. After the movie, we went to Seb's room. His room alone was bigger than our whole apartment. Seb asked, what do you want to eat? Let's order something. We almost never ordered food to be delivered. So most of the time, we have to eat whatever my mom makes. But Seb could eat whatever he felt like. I was so jealous of his life that I was ready to give 10 years of my own just to switch places with him. That night, Seb's driver dropped me off back home. As we were driving, something occurred to me. Seb never introduced me to his parents. Maybe they weren't home. But it was super weird that Seb never even mentioned them. We had been together all day. Not even once did he say the words mom or dad. When I went into the kitchen next morning, I saw that my dad wasn't at work. He smiled and said, "Good morning. I'm not working today. Come, let's have breakfast together." I didn't answer him. I was mad at him. Why couldn't he make more money? Why did he let his family live in such bad conditions? I felt this rage towards my father when I saw how the rich people lived. Before, I thought I didn't care about such things, but I was upset now. I felt really small compared to Seb. What surprised me was that nothing about him had changed. He was acting the same as before. One day, he asked, "Do you want to watch a zombie flick at your place this weekend? I'm really craving your mom's amazing spaghetti." I'd had enough. "Seb, you live in a mansion. You can have whatever you want." "Why would you want to hang out in my dingy apartment?" I said. Seb stared at me, surprised. "Are you serious? Is that what you really think?" he asked. I nodded. He said, "Then come over to my place this weekend. I see that there are a few things about me that you need to learn." I was really curious when I arrived at his place on Saturday. Seb took me upstairs. We went into a large bedroom. There was a woman lying in bed. There was an oxygen mask on her face. She wasn't moving at all and her eyes were closed. Seb kissed her on the cheek. Then he turned to me. "Let me introduce you to my mom. She has been in a coma for the past 8 years. These machines are keeping her alive. I've been waiting for her to wake up for 8 years. But I'm beginning to lose hope." I was very sad to hear all this. Seb went on, looking at his mom. "I would gladly give everything I have to be able to eat food my mom prepared for me. But that's not possible. Thanks to your mom, I remembered what it was like to eat food made with a mother's love, because I had completely forgotten." As Seb was speaking, a tear rolled down his cheek. "Do you know who did this to my mom? My father. Yes, my father. My parents were running the company together. A few times a year, they would go to Africa to buy diamonds from different mines. My dad found out that there was a mine in Angola that sold cheap diamonds. My mom didn't want to buy diamonds from there. To be sure the diamonds were of high quality, they had to go down into the mine and see them in their rough form. But since the mines selling cheap diamonds were being operated illegally, there was no safety inspections. Going down there was very dangerous. My dad wouldn't listen to my mom. When they went down into the mine, there was an accident and my mom was exposed to excessive levels of carbon monoxide. Unfortunately, she's been in a coma ever since. My dad rarely comes home because he feels guilty. When he does come here, he sits by her bed and cries nonstop for hours. The staff told me this since I haven't talked to him in years. The only contact I have with him is the texts he sends me on my birthday. I just delete them without answering. I didn't know what to say to Seb after he told me all this. I was really sad for him. Now I understood why he loved coming to our place. He had found a family after all these years. I had envied him for being able to order food from any restaurant he wants, but in fact, Seb would prefer a mother's cooking to anything from a restaurant. Yes, his father was a billionaire, but they weren't even in touch. He couldn't forgive him for what he had done to his mother. Seb opened up to me that day. That's how I understood there were things money couldn't buy. I realized how lucky I was to have the perfect family. Since that day, the bond between Seb and me has grown even stronger. I rarely go to his house, but he stays over at our place a few times a week. Seb used to be my best friend. Now I think of him as my brother.
Hi everyone, I'm Ethan. The day I graduated high school, my dad told me he needed to talk to me. He said, "Are you planning to keep living in this house?" I told him I had nowhere else to go. "I've been taking care of you for years. You need to start working if you want to stay in this house. You either start bringing in some money or find yourself another place to live." I graduated from high school with a high GPA. I wanted to go to college to be able to get a good job later. My family is not doing well financially. I obviously know this, so I was thinking, I'll get a part-time job and I won't be a burden to them. But working part-time meant I could only cover my own expenses. There was no way I could bring in enough money to make my dad happy. So I had to drop out of college. A friend's father owned a moving company. I started working there. They specialized in moving furniture from luxury homes. All of our clients were rich families. Since the furniture was really valuable, we were packing and carrying it very carefully. It was a really stressful job. I had to be super careful all the time. If I were to cause the slightest damage, I would have to work for months without pay. Like my mom, I was giving all the money I was making to my dad. But our financial situation had not changed. We could never pay the rent on time. It was all my dad's fault. He was spending a lot of money on himself. As soon as I started working, he bought himself a better car. My mom had been complaining about him blowing through money for years. But my dad would just get angry. We couldn't say anything because we were scared of him. One day, we were helping a wealthy client move as usual. The lady who owned the house called me over. We went down to the basement together. She showed me a few pieces of furniture. Pack these up and take them to the truck. The rest is garbage. You can put it all in the trash, she said. First, I carried the items the lady showed me to the truck. Then I started filling up a big bag with the things I was supposed to discard. I came across a roll of paper. Just as I was about to throw it out, I got curious and unrolled it. It was a charcoal drawing. It was simple, but very pretty. I couldn't just throw it away. I went up to the lady. "This is beautiful. Do you really want us to throw it out?" I said. She took a look at the drawing. My grandfather loved art. It must be his. You're right. Throwing it away would be disrespectful to his memory, she said. She rolled up the drawing and put it in her bag. My phone rang while I was at another house a few weeks later. It was my boss. "A client wants to see you. She's in our office now. Can you come over?" he said. I was really scared. Was something lost during a move? Or did we damage some furniture? I thought about all the bad things that could have happened until I got to the office. I stepped into the boss's office. The lady who'd been waiting for me got up with a big smile on her face. "You remember that drawing you brought me instead of throwing it away? It turned out to be a portrait of my grandfather, and it was made by Picasso. They met in a bar in Madrid. Picasso really liked my grandfather and wanted to give him a gift. He asked the waiter for a pen and paper and drew his portrait. We obviously didn't want to sell it because of its sentimental value. However, my husband and I decided to give you a small reward. If it hadn't been for you, this drawing would have ended up in the trash," she said. Then she handed me an envelope. I looked at my boss. "I'm proud of you, Ethan," he said with a smile. I was a little embarrassed but took the envelope from her. I left the office and sat on a bench outside. I wanted to know what was inside the envelope. I opened it. There was a check. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the amount on it. It was almost 5 times my annual salary. I thought of my dad right away, and of course my joy quickly turned into sadness. If I gave this money to him, he would spend it all on himself and not on our family. Both my mom and I had been stunned when we saw a gold chain around his neck one day. It was preposterous of him to spend money on something like that when we were having trouble paying our bills. Put yourself in my shoes. If you had such a father and came into some money, would you give it to him? One of my best friends, Travis, is studying economics in college. I gave him a call. I told him I had some money and asked him how to invest it. He's smart as a whip. "You called me at the right time. I've been trading tech stocks for a while. It's going really well. If you want, I can do that for you as well, but I have to tell you it's quite risky. There's no middle ground in the stock market. You either lose big or win big," he said. I trusted him, and anyway, that money had fallen into my lap. "I'm gonna give you half. The rest will be enough for me to live on," I told him. But unfortunately, things didn't go as well as Travis expected. He quickly burned through the money I gave him. He kept calling me to apologize. I didn't even understand why we were losing because I didn't know the first thing about the stock market. But as I said, I trusted Travis. I gave him the rest of my money as well. I got this money because I was lucky. "Something tells me I will get lucky again," I said. It turns out I was right. This time, Travis was constantly calling me to give me good news. We were both rich. You know what's really weird? I was getting cash from Travis since I didn't even have a bank account. But where would I keep all that cash? I thought about it for a while and finally decided to hide it in cardboard boxes in our attic. When I'd fill up a box, I'd get another one. My dad would totally lose it if he found out. Our attic was stuffed with money. So much so that I didn't even know how much money I had. One night, I decided to count all of it. It took me until the morning. As the sun came up, I realized I was a millionaire, and this was only a fraction of my total wealth. I quit my job the next day. I told my boss I had decided to go to college. But it wasn't true. I had begun to think I didn't even need a college education anymore. Every morning, I'd leave the house as if I were going to work and hang out with Travis or in a coffee shop. In the evening, I'd come back home as if returning from work. After a while, I bought myself a car just because the attic was too full and I had to get rid of some cash. I actually don't like sports cars very much, but I picked one of the most expensive sports cars so that I could make some room in the attic. There were still a lot of boxes. I bought a huge house to get rid of even more money and make space in the attic. And now I had a place to go during the day as well. You might be wondering why I didn't leave home, why I still continued to live with my family this whole time. I didn't want to leave my mom and my sister alone with my dad. I was sure he was going to treat them worse once I was gone. One evening, my dad said, "Call your mother and sister. I want to talk to all of you." A few minutes later, we were all standing in front of him. "I quit my job today. I've been working for years to keep this family going. I took care of you, but I'm tired now. From now on, I'm not going to work. You're going to look after me," he said with a smirk. Then he turned to my sister. "Sheila, you're quitting school too. The free ride you've been getting in this house is over. Everyone has to bring in money," he said. Sheila burst into tears straight away. "My mom couldn't keep silent. I've been working for years just like you. This is all nonsense. Won't you feel any shame loafing around the house while we toil away?" she screamed. When my dad started getting mad and charging towards my mom, I took her by the arm and led her outside. "Mom, don't be upset. I'll save both of you from this man. Give me some time," I said. My mom thanked me, thinking that I was saying these things just to comfort her. After everyone was asleep, I went up into the attic. I took a few photos when the place was filled to the brim with money. Then I spent all night moving the money to my new house. Actually, I should have done this earlier. I kept putting it off, thinking there was no rush. I came back the next morning. I parked my car in front of the house. I honked the horn. First, my mom and sister came out, then my dad. All three of them were staring at me and at the car. I asked my dad, "Do you know whose car this is?" "How should I know? I guess it's your boss's," he said. "No, Dad. This car is mine. I bought it with my own money," I said. My dad couldn't say anything. He was literally speechless. That morning, I'd gone to a print shop and had them print out the photo I took of the attic in poster size. I showed it to my dad. "Does this place look familiar to you?" I asked. Dad stuttered, Is that our attic? Whose money is that?" "Just like this car, I earned all that myself," I said. My dad was stunned. "I'm your father. That money is mine too," he yelled. I started to laugh as he turned to walk back to the house. He thought the money was still in the attic. "The attic is empty now. I moved all of it to my own house last night," I said. As a last resort, my dad started buttering me up. "You're my favorite child. I've always been good to you. I'm sure you love me too," that kind of thing. But we both knew none of this was true. It's been 4 months since this happened. Right now, I live with my mom and my sister. My dad calls one of us every single day. Of course, no one answers. To me, he texts, "My dearest son, I love you so much. I miss you a lot." To my sister, he writes, "My beautiful princess, you got me wrong. I'm gonna send you to college." He can't find us since he doesn't know where we live. I'm sure he is really mad at us, but he hides it well, because all he can think about is the money he saw in that photo. He is so naive to think that he could fool me with his fake words of love. I'm so happy I left him without a penny and got out of that house, after all he's done to us. I think he more than deserves it.